You're listening to a Monster Kid podcast.
Why don't we rent a video tonight?
Yeah, can we please?
On a weeknight?
Yeah, come on, Mom. It's okay.
Sure. Come on. Let's throw caution to the wind.
Put a little weekend in your week. Rent a video.
Hello, stranger. Welcome back to Vericon Video, a show where we relive forgotten and unforgettable movies that once lined the shelves of video stores everywhere. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Jordan.
And today we're heading across the pond to follow the intersecting lives of four terrible people. Well, that's not entirely fair. Four flawed, very conflicted, contradictory people. How's that?
Better.
This love and lust-seeking quartet trying to find themselves and what they want in a partner, or rather, a stranger. We're talking Mike Nichols' Closer from 2004. So sit back, relax, and welcome.
Welcome to the Cafe 80s, where it's always morning in America, even in the afternoon.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. I have the only gun on board. Welcome to Con Air.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Okay, good evening, America, and welcome aboard Apollo 13.
I'm so glad you could come. This is going to be such an exciting day. I hope you're enjoying it. I think you will.
Alice, Dan, Larry, and Anna, four strangers in London, develop in and out romantic relationships that never quite stabilize and find themselves longing for something else as their love lives slowly and sometimes quickly disintegrate. This one was hard to summarize.
Yeah, I don't blame you. There's a lot going on, but there's also it's so simple but so complex at the same time.
Yeah. So you hadn't seen this one, right?
No, I had not. I knew about this because obviously I would follow like the Oscar campaign every year. And I knew about this one because it was a Christmas time release in 2004. And it literally just had these four people in them. There wasn't an ensemble cast. It was just these four actors. And it was directed by Mike Nichols, which even for like 9-year-old me meant something because Mike Nichols had still been working pretty productively to that point. But yeah, I knew about it, and I knew that all four actors were apparently really good in it. And then as I got older, I knew that, like, I heard more people saying just how screwed up it was.
Yeah.
And all right, tread with caution. And then I watched it for this. So not the most glamorous sort of connection to this movie, but I knew about it, and I was always intrigued by its existence, especially the small cast. I didn't even know until we started working on this theme that it was actually done by a playwright. So Mr. Theater Studies, got away from it again.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that I was able to introduce you to this one, give you a reason to watch it, because I watch this one at least once a year. This is one that I can put on. The dialogue is so good. And we're going to talk about the script and stuff in a minute, but it's so quotable, and it shows up in other aspects of pop culture, which we'll talk about.
Oh, we will talk about it.
Some friends of mine, like we love talking about this movie, and we'll exchange quotes back and forth. I run the risk of saying this every time, but the more you watch a movie over time, there's something about not just peeling back multiple layers, but some movies, and I'm sure there are some of these, in your repertoire, that they simply age well. One of the things that I want to get to throughout the episode is the idea of maturity through experience. And so in terms of like relationships, but I think this movie not only addresses that theme very well, but the film itself, I think, has matured very well. There's something very universal in how it speaks to human experience and the way we develop relationships with other people, but also questioning what it is we want.
Yeah, it's an evergreen idea. It worked. This is a movie from the 2000s that was written as a play in the 1990s, and it doesn't feel like a 90s thing or a 2000 thing. It feels as evergreen now because it doesn't really hearken on to like a specific time period, or obviously a specific movement, which we'll get into when we talk about the background behind the play. But it feels fresh even now, even if it does take place in the 2000s and have a lot of 2000s filmmaking ideologies. Yeah.
Just a couple of years after this came out, I believe, I was in college and I sat in on some auditions for a play. And these two girls did a scene together from Closer. It's the scene when Larry and Anna have their big fight towards the end.
Oh.
But they did it, as a lesbian couple.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Which was, even thinking back then, like it worked so well because I think now looking back at it, realizing again just how universal this is across many different configurations of relationships. I guess that the things that the film address are not necessarily gendered.
No.
These conflicts arise out of not necessarily fragmented or troublesome personalities, but poorly configured relationships.
Yeah, it's not like a misogynist film like another film that Mike Nichols made. And it's not really about people do this because they're a man, people do this because they're a woman. I mean, there is some of that into Alice's character, which we'll get into.
Right.
But, it is these people and these relationships, but it also can be any sort of relationships.
Yeah. So at the time of this recording, you can watch this on HBO Max. It sometimes pops up on Netflix. I wish there was a really good disc release with bonus features. I would have loved a commentary track, but you can still find this on DVD and Blu-ray pretty cheap. It's well worth the $8 to $10 purchase.
Yes.
So Closer was released in December 2004. As Jordan said, it was directed by Mike Nichols, written by playwright Patrick Marber, and stars Julia Roberts, Jude Law, Natalie Portman, and Clive Owen.
Obviously, since we are still in the playwrights theme umbrella months, Closer began life as a stage play written by Patrick Marber, opened on the West End in London. Clive Owen originated the role of Dan, which is interesting, as I'll get into later when I talk about his performance. And Kieran Hines played Larry here. We talked about Kieran Hines in Bruges, ironically, written by another in-your-face playwright as well. Kieran Hines also played Larry in the Broadway debut at the Music Box Theater. In that production, Rupert Graves, who played Inspector Lestrade in the BBC version of Sherlock, played Dan. Anna Frail, who was in Pushing Daisies and lots of other things contemporarily, I think. The Land of the Lost movie. She played Alice, and Liam Neeson's former wife, Natasha Richardson, played Anna. Before I get into the next one, I just want to make sure what I'm saying, because I mentioned the in-your-face thing. I think I was going to get into this later, but the in-your-face theater movement I mentioned in the In Bruges episode we do, because Martin McDonagh is sort of linked in with that movement. So is Patrick Marber. Right. It's basically, if you didn't listen to that one, and also listen to that one, the In Bruges episode is really good. The in-your-face movement is basically a bunch of British and UK playwrights in the mid to late 90s, basically taking out a lot of the frustration they had with the modern culture and post-Thatcherism and giving these very screwed up, completely deranged at times, very vulgar, very vivid, very simple at times, portraits of life. And, just a lot of relationship struggles, a lot of people who take a lot of drugs, who have a lot of sex.
Right.
And I think that because McDonagh sort of skirted around this movement, and I think that Closer is very much an in-your-face play. And Marber is very much an in-your-face writer, in this era at least. He would sort of hedge out of it once or twice as he went on. This is in-your-face theater at its most in-your-face.
The film was produced on a budget of $27 million and was a moderate financial success at the box office. At the Academy Awards, Clive Owen and Natalie Portman were nominated for Best Supporting Actor and Best Supporting Actress.
And they would end up losing to Morgan Freeman and Cate Blanchett, respectively. Morgan Freeman for $1 Million Baby, and Cate Blanchett for The Aviator, a very important movie when talking about the production and casting of this movie, which we'll get into.
Yes. And Owen and Portman would, however, win in those categories at the Golden Globes.
Yeah, interesting. This is a really cool one that we alluded to last episode that I've been waiting to talk about. Musicians love lifting lines from this movie because the dialogue is so great and so pristine, and they like referencing it. So the chorus for Fall Out Boy's Thanks for the Memories, a very popular alt-rock hit from 2007, features the line, tastes like you, only sweeter, but sweeter, which is, of course, from this movie. In a B-side on the same album, Infinity on High, for any other emo kids out there, the line, I love everything about you that hurts, is featured, which is also in this movie. And Fall Out Boy aren't the only emo rock band that love this movie. Their partners in crime, Panic at the Disco, named 2 consecutive songs on their debut album, A Fever You Can't Sweat Out, after a full quote from Closer, from Alice in this movie during the exotic dancing scene. Lying is the most fun a girl can have without taking her clothes off, and But It's Better If You Do are consecutive songs on that album. I like both of those bands a lot. I'm glad that we got to talk about it.
Yeah, like I knew about the lines in the songs by Fall Out Boy. I didn't know about the ones from Panic. I don't know, it's just curious. Like, I remember this movie being very popular for a hot minute when it came out and then quickly disappeared. So I don't know, why do you think that is? Like, do you think it's a credit to like Marber's sharp dialogue that they wanted to lift those lines?
Well, I honestly think that and this is a whole music theory thing that I could get into because that's one of my other special interests, but I think that there is sort of a link between the sort of angst and oversexed wanderlust of Closer that appeals to a lot of the emo movement from the mid 2000s on. And I don't think what I have to remember about a lot of these bands, especially Panic at the Disco, they're like in their early 20s when they're making a lot of these pioneer emo rock albums like Fever You Can't Sweat Out and Infinity on High and From Under the Cork Tree and follow those. And so they're young and they're angsty and they want sex and they want a lot of the same things that the characters in Closer want. And like it makes sense that they would see bits of themselves or bits of Closer that they would want. You know what? I'm going to remember that line and name an album on it. Although I would be remiss if I didn't point out that there is a song on the Fall Out Boy album, Folie à Deux, called Coffees for Closers.
Oh.
Take that for what you will.
Wow, I didn't see that other connection coming.
I just remembered it as we were bringing this up, and I'm like, because I was thinking, okay, what other movie quotes do Fall Out Boy? And I'm like, oh, shit.
I'll be damned. I love it. I love it. Yes. I love doing this show for all this great stuff I get to learn.
It's amazing what we get to figure out. It's also great when I can just fucking go on about music for far too long, which will also come back later in the music.
Yes, it will. It will, indeed.
Yes.
All right. Let's jump into our discussion points here. So let's start off talking about the script.
Oh, the script.
I love... As I said before, love the dialogue in this movie. Like whenever someone asks me for a movie recommendation featuring sharp dialogue, I send them here.
And rightfully so. I think that this is along the same vein of the sort of David Mamet's ideology of just keep battering away with different dialogue that seems fresh and new. Mm-hmm. But it comes from a different place than Mamet. It comes from a different kind of angst, a different kind of dissatisfaction than the usual, angry magician Zionist thing that we were ragging on Mamet about last week. As I was watching this, I wrote down little samplings of some of the dialogue that worked for me, and a lot of it, it's not like Heist where it would just be one quote that would sort of stand out, or just one or two exchanges. A lot of it was just like back and forths in this, just lots of really good back and forths. So there's the, I think this was the Larry and Anna scene, I believe. It's fish piss in the sea, so do children. Don't eat children either. That was when I knew I was in for something interesting.
Yeah, if I remember right, like whenever I first saw this, the moment I knew I was going in for something interesting was the chat, like the online chat between Larry and Dan posing as Anna.
Yes.
Which is such a hoot. I can't wait to talk about that. Yeah. But also in that scene, whenever Larry meets Anna for the first time and he's like trying to make conversation with her, and they're in the aquarium and he's like, fish, you got to respect them. Have you? Of course. We were fish long ago before we were apes. You mentioned a hotel. No rush. Actually, there is. I got to be in surgery by 3. It's just...
God bless Clive Owen.
Yeah, I mean, Clive Owen, I mean, he is, and I'll say this again and again, he's my favorite part of this movie because he gives such a great and varied performance in this.
Oh my God, yes.
But yeah, just little exchanges like that. But even just those lines, like they have such a cadence to them that you can't help but... I mean, if you like great literature, and I'll talk about that again later, but when you just kind of fall in love with the language and the patter, that's no exception.
And there's a lot of patter in this. It's a lot of very quick dialogue, very on top of each other. The first scene with Anna and Dan, I believe, when they're in her studio, is a lot of that. A lot of very on top of each other stuff.
Yeah.
And one of the things, Brennan, that you said when you were introing this movie to me, however long ago when we were working on the Playwright series, is you said that people don't talk this way. And I actually think the dialogue can be very realistic in this movie. That's mostly because it's a play before all else. I mean, the plays go for realistic dialogue rather than just, what's functional. I mean, Marber keeps things close to realistic interrelational pattern because that's one of the fundamental pillars of all playwriting. It needs to feel plucked out of life. It needs to feel like real conversations.
Yeah, no, I agree. And perhaps what I meant was the dialogue is more theatrical, well, of course, to the ear, because the cleverness of some exchanges that just have so much, they have like a punchline or a payoff, and it is more true to life than I initially gave it credit for. But I probably said that because I was still entrenched in the Mammoth verse at the time.
Yes.
But that staccato back and forth, especially in that art gallery scene between Larry and Alice, and later in the fight between Larry and Anna, you get these natural sounding exchanges, but they sound so polished at the same time. And that's not a criticism. It's just like when you, like I said, when you read great literature and get caught up in the language and the cadence and even the timbre you hear in your head, it's a satisfying experience, like aside from the dramatic elements playing out.
Very. It's one of the film's strengths is just how, polish is one way to say it, but just how good, for lack of a more specific term, a lot of this dialogue and a lot of this feels.
I agree.
Works.
Yeah. Polish isn't quite the right word, but what you're getting at is closer to what. Hey, closer.
We're gonna have to do a drink every time we did that because we did that when we were prepping to record. So,
oh my God. But it is just so damn good. Like it's witty. It's there are moments that just hit so hard, like just that have this not just resonance, but this deeper impact that I can't quite articulate, but it's just the mark of a really great writer.
And he's really on a nice wavelength with this one, even as an adaptation, which we'll get to when we get to the sort of the writing portion. Yeah, I mean, this is the writing portion, but anyway, losing my mind. Sometimes Marber's dialogue goes from clever to silly, back to clever again, like because Anna describes Dan's entrapment of Larry as two guys wanking in cyberspace, and Larry, with a very funny Clive Owen read, goes confidently, "He was the wanker." I love that read. I did not do it justice even slightly, but God,
no, I mean, you're right. It's confidently, he says it confidently, but also defensively to imply that he's not of Dan's ilk. He was the victim.
No.
But Mamet, I mean, it's hard to not go back to Mamet because we just covered him, but he makes some of these moves too. Like we heard some of that in Heist last time.
Yeah, so's Gumby.
So's Gumby. What was the line? Nice day for the race?
Yeah. Nice day for the race. Future generations, some of that shit.
Yeah.
Get the fuck in the car. One of my few criticisms about Closer and about Marber's writing style is that the dialogue can be at times on the nose, especially when characters point blank state their reasoning and thought processes. Dan says he's leaving Alice because he's selfish and because I think I'd be happier with her. How many times do people just point blank state their motivation and their reasoning behind things in real life? I understand it's a play. I understand it's, got to be polished and you got to know what the characters are thinking because it's a play. I mean, wait, it's a movie, but it's a play. But it didn't need to be said. Yeah, no, I agree with you. I feel like there are moments that could have played out without dialogue, or I feel like that we could have, that whole thing about, showing, not telling. But like Dan says that he loves, I think it's Alice. I can't remember who he's talking to, but he loves her because she doesn't need him. Yeah. Maybe he's talking about Anna. I can't remember, but the characters here are very introspective and do talk through much of what they're feeling or thinking. And it seems to come about more when there's no room for lies, or rather no time to think of any or deflect. It's like when the floodgates open and there's no other option but to confront the situation with full candor and honesty. Like near the end, whenever Dan is about to confront Alice and he says, "This will hurt." Just that moment alone, this will hurt. He knows what he's about to do, but it's as though he can't bear the weight of the deception any longer. Like they must unburden themselves, and that goes for really everybody in the film, but especially in the Dan and Alice relationship, because they're in this sort of Marber world. They have to be that blunt and that sort of transparent about things, and so
the Marber verse.
Because we talked about the Mammoth verse last time, and then of course with a lot of playwrights and with the writers, you have to just assume these are just the rules that they set for their own world, and so Marber sort of works for that as well, even though it is very similar to the real world.
It's a close enough approximation to where it's more believable than say Mammoth.
Oh, yeah.
And
it's just a little bit more cynical than the real world.
Yeah. Yeah. And in some cases, like the moment with Larry and Alice in the strip club, like we realize that these people can't trust the truth when they hear it. Like their entire discourse is so dishonest, not just in what they say, but how they present themselves, that whenever Alice says her name is, quote, just plain Jane Jones, like Larry can't believe her, and so there's just been so much lying that even when the truth comes out, no one can recognize it.
Exactly. They can't take anything at face value.
Right.
That's not how they've done anything in their lives.
And aside from like the dialogue, like I've not read the script, so I'm not sure if this is crediting Marber, Nichols, or the actors, but the quieter moments are powerful too. Like the one that sticks out to me is like I'm thinking of when Larry slowly and gently puts his hand to Alice's face in the art gallery, and there's this just electric energy between them.
Yeah.
An almost kiss. And Larry's just like, you take care now. He just kind of slyly walks away. But those little moments play out very well too.
I mean, this is why you get these actors together to do rehearsals, and you do like intimacy training, and you do like you choreograph the chemistry, and you get these people together and you have them work off each other and say, well, we're going to let's try this for the next time, and I'm going to do this. Yeah. And you work off me this way. It's like wrestling in a sense. It's like, you give yourself, you do make a little eye contact. Like, okay, we're going to do this next. Let's try to give this a shot,
Yeah. And whenever we get to the acting section and talk more about Clive Owen, I want to preview that a little bit here, but I think maybe why he's so damn good here is that, well, one, he's done the play before.
Yes.
And so he's had the opportunity to see what works and what doesn't. I mean, I think he's probably had a lot of opportunity to work some of that out on the front end so he's going in probably much more prepared and educated about how to best play this material and how to translate that for the screen.
Yeah.
One last thing, and this is a tiny, tiny criticism, but like the passage of time can be a little difficult to keep up with because of like the cues can be very subtle at times. It's not too jarring. Was it for you?
Yeah. That was one of the other issues that I had with the script, that they didn't always say how much time had passed. I mean, but then again, that's also a playwright's thing. You have to just sort of, have the audience, because you're just doing just a series of scenes. And you have to state, eventually, so on and so forth, without being too obvious about how much time has passed. And so he had that mentality, and it didn't exactly translate to the screenwriting mentality of you've got to tell the audience a little bit. And I sort of get why he's done that. Yeah, because there are a few more obvious ones, like whenever Larry comes home to Anna, and he's like, wait a minute, stop. I want to remember this moment for the rest of my life. The first time coming home to my wife. Exactly.
So we get the sense, okay, well, enough time has passed to where they were engaged, they got married. And so we can kind of get a better sense of a large chunk of time has passed. But there are moments where we don't really know. We just kind of have to infer that as the scene progresses. Especially when you get the cutting here of having the scene of Anna just sort of sitting in the sort of loft happening very soon after another. I think that's right. Is it right after the scene, like where they get into the taxi cab or something? Or am I missing up the movie? I think that's right. The continuity towards the end, I always misremember the order of things, but yeah. Too. Yeah, no, it seemed like it was like, I originally assumed that shot was just like later that night thinking about it. But no, it turns out it's much later entirely. Right, so yeah. It's tricky the way that they stage it. It is. All right, so let's go on to the least sexual movie about sex ever made. Uh-huh. Yeah. Okay. Before I get into this bit, this is definitely a movie about sex. I don't really think about sex that often. I'm kind of a prude. I kind of, don't actively seek out movies about this sort of subject. It's like, oh, great, this sort of thing is happening. This is what it's about. Lovely. All right, I'll enjoy it as a movie. Sure. But it's funny that when I last recorded with Lewis for the Gory Picture Show, I told him, I said, yeah, I think this next movie, Jordan, you had texted me that you were watching it. I said, I think Jordan's blushing watching this movie. Uh-huh. I mean, look, I like, Jesus. I sent you, I think, the screenshot of Clive Owen going Jesus during the online chat scene. Yeah. This is not a kind of movie I actively seek out. I don't go for like the uber smut and the uber
sex things. But the thing about this movie is that it's a movie about sex where we don't see a lot of the sexual activity. It's mostly people talking about sex in very unsexy ways.
Yeah.
And that's really the appeal of this. Because of this in-your-face mentality, Patrick Marber has figured out a way to make a play about sex that's not sexy, that's repulsive, that's hard to watch, that's not even remotely arousing. Yeah, even for straights.
Yeah, because there are no like sex scenes or even heavy makeout scenes or anything like that. All of that happens off camera.
Yeah, I mean, acts are described.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lots of acts are described, but not in the way that makes them sound appealing.
Right.
I also made this into like a semi-Vulgarian piece, like the McDonough thing.
Mm-hmm.
So first of all, there's little hints of where the movie's going to go. Because the first 9 minutes are all just sort of like, okay, they're meeting, they're talking. It's Dan and Alice, and they're just, oh yeah, how are you? What's going on here? We like each other, so on. And Dan starts describing his job as writing obituaries. And, he talks about the little code words, which I knew about from an episode of QI. And so he talks about the little code words of, he valued his privacy, gay. He enjoyed his privacy, raging queen. So in the world of in-your-face theater, even the most normal, likable characters at the start are subconsciously homophobic. So that's lovely. We're a couple episodes away from Raging Queen, but that's not a person; it's the band.
Oh, and then the two guys wanking in cyberspace. That's...
Oh yeah, we there's lots of that. And again, the first 9 minutes of this movie are all conversation and talk and just like regular stuff. And then Alice mentions that she strips, and then everything turns for the audience and for Dan. She says, "Look at your little eyes." When you realize that it's taken a dark turn.
Mm-hmm.
Then, as we start figuring out what this movie is, what this play is, it starts dawning on you, because the initial kiss between Dan and Anna, the first one in Anna's studio, is as lewd as a completely clothed, otherwise appropriate kiss can feel. Dan is very aggressive in this scene, even if Anna isn't entirely into it, but sort of is enough to let it happen.
Right. And I think we don't know about this until much later in a flashback, one of the few flashbacks we get. Whenever Dan and Alice meet for the first time and she's hit by the taxi cab, and then he's in the back of the taxi with her going to the hospital, she's unconscious and he kisses her.
Yeah.
While she's unconscious. And
in your face. Slightly rapey theater.
Right.
So something I thought was interesting. Dan has quit smoking when he first meets Alice and then has taken up it again by the time he is seeing Anna. Is there a correlation here between sex and vices?
Yeah, and this has come up before, too, in the last couple of episodes.
Yes.
But it's also worth mentioning that Larry soon takes up smoking again. Because
that's when he gets the upper hand, I think, right?
Right, yeah. He comes into it by way of Alice when they meet in the art gallery. Yeah. And so, we could also look at Alice as her arrival is essentially the inciting incident. Isn't it? Like she's really the one who establishes all of these relationships, and then later at the end she dips out, just kind of leaves it all behind.
She lets loose Pandora's box and she goes back to America, and the Tom and Daisy Buchanan complex of smashing everybody up and then just sort of leaving and going unscathed themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You see, we reference literature on this show. We're artsy.
We are.
All right, I think we have to talk about the internet sex scene.
Yes.
All of the vulgarity in this is emotionless and via computer. Dan's smoking nonchalantly. Larry's smirking, more amused than aroused. He takes a fucking office call with his dick out. That's the movie in a nutshell. A sexual act is in progress, and Larry's completely cognitively removed in it.
Get it out.
Yeah.
Dan, as Anna says, it's so great. This is an interesting scene because, like, Dan, he looks so sleazy. Like, he's just, like, hanging out, and he's got this ashtray full of butts that he's put out, and he's just kind of lounging in his filth. And it's just like, okay, well, he's going to just have some fun with some stranger on the internet. And for what purpose other than his own amusement? And so, I don't know. I feel like what we've seen of Dan up to this point, I think we feel like he's an all right guy. Like he's a writer, or he works at this newspaper. He's kind of charming and funny in a quirky nerdy sort of way. But now he's like, okay, well, we get this other window into who he is as a person.
Yes. Kind
of behind closed doors. And we also get a sense of what Larry's like. This is his introduction.
Yeah.
So he's this dermatologist. And he's
I love that.
Yeah, it's
his entire job is looking at skin. It's not a glamorous job. Marber did this deliberately.
Yes, it's great. Flesh is mundane and ordinary until it's not.
Yeah.
I've been watching too much Mammon, I think.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I like when he answers the first phone call, Larry, and then he takes the phone off the receiver and then he locks the door and closes the blinds. Here he is. He's working. He's a doctor.
Yeah, and he's work and he's doing all this sex shit. Sure.
But yeah, you're right though. He is like turned on, but at the same time, like he is very amused by this whole thing. Like even as that scene plays out, he reads that this Anna person is having an orgasm on the other side, and he's
with
just
lots and lots of like keyboard smashing.
Yes, lots of that, and he just kind of smiles and chuckles a little bit.
Jesus,
and asks, "Was it good?" Says no. It's a great little moment because we see him like shake his head a little bit, amused still, like, oh, really? And then, of course, it goes into let's meet up in person. But it's a great scene. We'll talk about it more in a minute. But that just the way that plays out with the music, I just fucking love that. It's just so funny to me.
Classical music playing as they sort of, screw with each other, literally and figuratively. And there are things in this scene that I do not dare write down or say on a podcast. It's me as a prude again. In Bruges had some moments of this, mostly involving the C word. This has more.
Yes. And I wonder if that has more to do with just it being a UK thing. Like the C word being a bit more.
They love the C word over there.
They do, yeah. I think it's a bit more common than it is here. But yeah, then we move on to the aquarium scene.
Yeah, this is very interesting to me. Larry's vulgarity falls on deaf ears, even though he thinks there's a joint understanding between him and Anna. And it's intriguing because Larry keeps saying these ridiculously, outlandishly vulgar things to Anna because he thinks they speak the same language, where Anna is seeing Larry say all these things and begins to assume this is who he is, and it intrigues her.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love his entrance because he's the instructions.
Wearing the white jacket.
Yes. I've got the coat, the white coat.
Yeah. I'm sorry?
I see.
Yeah.
But I think my favorite delivery, maybe in the movie, is when he's like, "I'm Larry, the doctor. Hello, Dr. Larry." But yeah, he's saying this, this stuff from he and Dan's conversation. Where my wet knickers sit on my face, come hungry bitch, tie me up, and all that.
Jesus Christ.
And she's just like, okay, stop.
And then him going, why do I feel like a pervert? The truth is revealed. The stigma is applied.
Yeah. And so she's like, yeah, I think you've been the victim of a practical joke.
Yeah, which is great.
He's like, no. You saw me and now you're not interested. And so again, like he can't believe it.
Yeah. And it becomes their little running joke.
Right. Yeah. Cupid who brought them together.
Tried to tear them apart. And then, so in the scene where Larry and Alice meet for the first time, there's the exchange of, you shouldn't smoke. Fuck off. Vulgarity tied to a vulgarity. Then Alice still gets the doctor to have a smoke. No. Yes. No. Fuck it. Yes. No. I've given up. Something in here about the tussle of morals and such.
Yeah. I mean, it's the play of temptation, of seduction. It's like, here's something you want but can't have, so you will want it more. And it's, which of course is just an extension of Alice because he's so attracted to her, and they have that electric moment, like I mentioned, where they're closing the gap between themselves, and it's like, is something going to happen, like right here in the middle of this exhibition with Anna and Dan here too.
It's a little tense.
It is, yeah.
There's a lot going on in that scene. That's really cool. Larry literally confirms that Alice is a stripper and then makes a move on Alice. Okay, first of all, it's very hard to hear Clive Owen say the word stripper and mean it non-ironically. I mean, I know it was the late 90s, but Marber couldn't have just used exotic dancer or something.
Yeah, well, one, I think this was still pretty common verbiage back then, but two, I think it's also indicative of Larry's character and kind of where he's coming from. And he probably has this very specific image in his mind of, what that term is attached to.
Right.
Larry's mind it's a whole other thing that I'm very fascinated by that we'll talk about more.
Also, compare this to Dan being taken aback by the admission from Alice. Dan is initially scared. Larry immediately wants more. Also, it's very interesting that this attempted conquest occurs directly in front of a backlit photo of a naked pregnant woman.
Yes, and this is still at the exhibition, right? Yeah, and this woman is a stranger. And also interesting that these characters take creative inspiration from one another, like Dan's book, The Aquarium, Alice as his muse for his next book, Anna taking the stranger theme for her exhibition, and Alice becoming one of Anna's strangers even.
Yes.
So there's that's another layer that I don't know, I'm really interested in. Like just kind of the idea of thievery, I guess, it's taking place and appropriating aspects of the other person and like trying to make that part of themselves.
I mean, adultery is also thievery in a sense.
Yes.
Stealing someone else's monogamy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway. It makes less sense the more you think about it.
Yeah, we're going to be coming back to that quite a bit, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. The strangers, we've got a whole lot on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the logic of the film, Larry cheating on his now wife Anna with a prostitute is okay because it's not as bad as long-term adultery with another person like what Anna's been doing, at least in this sort of scene that we have with Larry and Anna.
Mm-hmm. And his confession is even interesting because he comes in like after having taken a bath and everything, and he's fully dressed in street clothes and says, I think you might be about to leave me, and I didn't want to be wearing a dressing gown. It's just in the way he says it, he's sorry.
Yeah.
I slept with someone in New York, a whore. I'm sorry. And it's just a great delivery because it's so goddamn shallow. Mm-hmm. This is followed by, I couldn't lie to you because I love you. He's in control of the situation. He's confident. And then when Anna says it's fine, she's so dismissive about it, it appears. He doesn't anticipate that. And you just see him lose that control in an instant. And then he finds out that she's been sleeping with Dan. Cupid, who's our joke. And it's like, you just can't believe it. Oh man, it's just, this whole scene is really fantastic to watch play out.
It is. It's a little tough to watch because it gets so intense. I mean, Larry makes Anna recount the details of the most recent sexual escapade with Dan, where it was, how many times, how the sex went. The anger is completely leading to the point where it's no longer sexual.
Right. And it goes full primal because she's like, why do you want to know all this? And he's like, because I'm a fucking caveman. He has to know everything, every little detail. And yes, it's no longer sexual. So what does it become? Like, is it just to make her feel more ashamed, or is it because he truly wants her honesty, as he says later?
Well, they don't think it through because they don't know what they want.
Yeah.
They just want to completely just go through the emotion and keep trying with it, but they don't know what it's going to lead to or why it has to lead to this.
Right. And to me, just thinking now, it's also reminiscent of the exchange in the chat room, in that it's this, just describe it to me, because this is going to turn him on or something. Like
it's the exact opposite of the chat room scene.
Yeah. I mean, it's perverse, but it's cringy in a very strange sort of way. Like, well, Dan has a line later whenever, sorry, listeners, we'll be jumping around a little bit here.
Yeah.
But later, whenever Dan and Alice have their fight, he wants to know all of the details between her encounter with Larry.
Yeah.
And like, he won't let it go. And he has to know everything. He has to know all the details. And when she asks why, he says, because he's a lunatic. And
similar.
It's a similar scene. And I don't know really what to make of that. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it, but it's like, what does the knowing do for them?
Yeah. I don't even think they know.
I don't think they do either. But there's something to that. There's got to be some word to pin down, like what that act does for these characters, because it's clearly important because we get it twice from two different characters and just in parallel.
I think it's just like they're doing these sort of horrible things, but they want to feel pure. They want to feel like they're the only one doing it. They don't want to feel like they've been lapped. They want the upper hand at all times.
Right. And in a way, knowing the details almost makes them feel a part of it. But, that it's in a way giving them the satisfaction of feeling like having been involved, I guess.
That's the sexual act.
That's the sexual act.
That's what gives them the satisfaction.
Yeah. That's the real intimacy there, is knowing, because, throughout we have characters saying they want honesty, and the truth, but really the intimacy they're looking for is to know one's secrets. Like to dig in deep into that part of somebody that they don't want to give up, and to take it forcefully in some cases, like the way that Larry does with Anna. Yeah.
Okay. We found it.
It took us a minute, but if you want to add on to that, if you got any comments, please let us know. Hit us up on Twitter. Send us an email.
There's a lot of different ways to interpret this movie. There not a lot of them are wrong. So.
Yeah.
And then even obviously if we're talking about this as an unsexy movie that does sexy things unsexily, then we have to also talk about the scene in the strip club with Larry and Alice doing sex moves. It's not particularly sexy. Even if Larry is turned on, it's still cold. It's still nonchalant. It's still business almost.
Because as he is talking to her, she responds as though she's someone else. Like she doesn't recognize him. And it just frustrates.
Like he's another client, like it's anybody.
Right. And it infuriates him because he's trying to get through to her. It's just maddening to him because she's not losing that persona that she's taken on as a dancer. But again, here I want to ask, like, what intimacy is Larry ultimately looking for here? Like it seems as though he's at his most vulnerable here. Is it physical intimacy with Alice? It's like he's wanting something quote unquote real, like no falsehoods. Like he and the other characters that have this romanticized idea of a partner or significant other and the hope of a relationship that's stable and happy and fulfilling and all that. But they fail to see how others, as well as themselves, are complicated and contradictory creatures of habit. And so much conflict comes out of, well, if I do it, it's okay. But if you do it, then it's a problem. They all want relationships on their own terms, and that's why they fail.
The line that just came into my mind, oh my God. It just literally popped into my head. And it is a quote from the song that is playing during this scene. And it is the quote, "I am human and I need to be loved just like everybody else does," which is a quote from How Soon Is Now by the Smiths, which is playing in this exact scene. How do I do this?
Good show.
I'm not supposed to be this good.
Good show, old man. But
no, we already did that one several months ago.
Yes, we did. That was a good one.
We're near another Dan and Dea movie. Don't worry. But,
yes.
You know, God, how do I do that? I don't even like the Smiths. I'll get to that later. But,
kind of go back to that question of what intimacy Larry is looking for.
What do you have to do to get some goddamn intimacy around here, as Larry says?
Right. Yeah. I think it goes back to what we were saying earlier about, like, he wants to know her name. He's like, "Tell me your real name." And she says, and he gives her more money. And she says, "It's Jane." Gives her more money. It's still Jane.
Yeah.
And it's like he doesn't want her honesty, but he wants her secrets. He wants what it is that she's hiding. And I think that we could say that applies to all or most of the characters we're talking about. Yeah. It's like, give me what you're not willing to give up. That's what I want. That's what's precious.
They want universal knowledge. They want to know everything, even the things that they shouldn't know, even if it does them in. Which,
yes.
Honestly, oh God, I did it again. It would have made more sense if Cate Blanchett was in one of these roles, considering that that's exactly what did her in the fourth Indiana Jones movie. What is happening to me?
Side note, I haven't seen that since theaters, and I don't know if I'll ever see it again.
Me either, but I remember that. It's honestly, this is a bold statement. It's not as bad as its reputation seems to indicate.
I'll have to go back to it. I have to go back to it. I've got to get off this fucking stubborn high horse that I just completely disregarded. And I just think in my mind, like, it's the Holy Trilogy. You know, I got to get away from that. I'm just so damn stubborn.
It's another popcorn movie, just like the first three. It may not be as good as, Raiders of the Lost Ark or Last Crusade, but it's fun. It fits with the rest of them. The fifth one will be probably fine too.
Yeah.
Because it's James Mangold and he's awesome.
Yeah. No, he does good work.
He does. But back to this.
Oh, yeah.
Larry suggesting one final fuck for old time's sake from Anna is peak in your face. In other circumstances, it could be a sexy idea, but it's cold and it's desperate and it's completely unsexy.
And it's an attempt to get something out of nothing. So in other words, there's nothing left in their relationship at this point. It's frigid and empty. All that's left is sex. And to have it for no other reason, then there's nothing left to take away or salvage. It's as if Larry feels like he'll at least get her body one last time, and maybe that'd be enough for him to go on. You know,
it's not even her body; it's the idea of her body.
It's the idea.
It's the idea of what it used to be.
Yeah,
good times, and it's not even going to get the buzz that he needs. And of course, it ends up doing that because we need a happy ending for somebody in this damn movie.
Yeah,
But
it's also that idea of, I kept saying, wanting someone's secrets, but that's not as precise as I want it to be. I think it's like, in this case, it's something that, okay, well, they're about to break up or they're about to get a divorce.
Yeah.
And so the one thing that he's not supposed to have right now is her body, because they're about to separate. It's just another opportunity to take something that he wants, but knows that he shouldn't be having,
Stealing again.
He's stealing again. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Everyone in this movie is a thief in some sense of the word. Like,
we just did Heist, though.
oh my God. New crew for this one.
Can you imagine if the end of this movie was Ricky Jay showing up going, that you thought there was going to be something kind here. Something sensible.
Where would he show up? Where would he show up in this movie?
He would be in Times Square.
He would be in Times Square.
And Natalie Portman would be his contact. Well done. You saw all these things from all these people. Did you get anywhere from it? Excellent, kid. Nice day for the race. As the score from Heist comes in.
Oh, yes. Yeah, super cut of Heist and Closer. That would be fun.
Oh, my God.
I'm just just imagining that and having fun in my head. Sorry. But yeah, I mean, they selfishly take from others in an attempt to validate themselves intimately, professionally, and creatively. And who better to prey on than strangers?
Mm-hmm.
Which, before we get to the next topic, I want to ask you, like, what does the title Closer mean? And I just a couple of things that I want to propose or suggest is that our four characters want to get closer to someone but don't know how. So stealing Alice's life for a book, taking photos of strangers, people are mysteries, so a window into who they are, ?
Yeah.
An attempt to get closer to the truth of people, their essence, the thing that we talked about wanting, that is most precious, that they're wanting to take from other people, like their honest selves that they're too afraid to reveal or permit others to see.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
It could be also an ironic thing about just like, the movie is called Closer, meaning, intimacy, getting close.
Yeah.
And ends up being people who strive themselves further away from each other.
Yeah.
Or, hear me out.
Okay.
It's a very fucked up movie about sex, and there is a song called Closer with the lyric, I want to fuck you like an animal, from around the same time that the play was written.
Yes.
So it could be a Nine Inch Nails reference. It could also, British, it could also be a reference to the very similarly hard to listen to album Closer by the Joy Division.
Mm-hmm.
So it could mean basically that all of these pieces of media are fucked and they're mascots for this fucked piece of media. And there's also a song on, if not Closer than the other album that the Joy Division came out with called Love Will Tear Us Apart. That I'm surprised wasn't in this movie at some point. Maybe the Smiths' budget blew them out.
I'm very curious now. Is Patrick Marber still alive?
I think so.
I've got to look this up real quick. Oh, he's a young guy in his mid-50s. Oh, he's on Twitter. There, I'm going to follow him on Twitter.
Oh, nice.
I was looking to see if he had a website.
Patrick Marber's fucking made fucking plays and fucking films about fucking cunting pieces of shit.
You attract that bit about my cunt fucking kids.
Oh, God. I wasn't even meaning to do fucking Ray Fiennes, but you know what? It made sense.
It did.
Oh, I'm awfully fond of saying the C word or whatever. I don't do this shit. I'm Mr. Clean or whatever, except if I'm randomly dropping the F-bomb.
When sheep go to bed, they count you, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
man,
shit.
So cool.
Where are we? Oh, yes. Okay.
Strangers. Collecting semen. That was not the lyric, I think, that Frankie went with. That would have been a very different song. Scooby-Dooby-Doo must have made him... It would have been something completely different. Anyway. I'm rolling. You've got to stop me before I
go.
Too
Let's
much.
roll, man.
Strangers.
We're having fun here.
Strangers.
Yeah.
This movie is about strangers. And there's a very big motif in this movie about strangers. I'm sober. I'm completely sober. I swear to God. It took me until a couple of uses of this term throughout the movie to figure out this was a motif. But eventually, it's just sort of like, oh, I see what he's doing here. So literally, the first line of the film is, "Hello, stranger," said by Alice to Dan. Sums it up, gets us moving immediately. Anna says she only photographs strangers. Then, as Dan comes on to her, she says she doesn't kiss strangers before kissing him. Anyway, the fine line between client and conquest, stranger and intimate person, blurred.
Yeah, their spark happens very quickly. He just tells Anna, I have to see you. I've got to see you. But that's their whole kink, like the allure and mystery of a stranger. Like, oh, it's so taboo. Ooh. And and Anna's tempted and gives in right away and just gives herself over to it.
Yeah. It's what turns these people on. I mean, like literally, like Larry asks Dan, masquerading as Anna, his sex fantasy. It involves strangers.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And I was thinking about like the chat room as a forum for anonymity and also to indulge in one's fantasies, because in that space, it's not quote unquote real and ephemeral. And I just imagine our four characters' fantasies about strangers as a practiced thing, like something that's just that, a fantasy. Like it has a finite degree of realization until it actually happens for them. Like the fantasy itself is perpetuated by falsehoods, pretending to be other people, hiding behind a computer or a camera or a false name, for example.
Yeah.
And I think that's when these characters really start to struggle, when they don't have that protection anymore, that they become vulnerable and they're trying to negotiate protecting themselves with also having a relationship.
Another friggin' song lyric came to mind, but it's not relevant. It's just Billy Joel saying, sometimes a fantasy is all you need. Which is literally a song about shaking it solo. But I didn't want to do it, but I gotta be lonely.
I was just thinking about it, the chat room as like a safe space because they can be anybody they want to be.
Yeah, they can be as fucked up as they want. And there's no judgment because you can't see in, you can't see the eyes, you can't see the facial expression, and even so, they're both kind of into it, at least, smirkingly into it.
And seemingly like no consequences for that, for anything that takes place or any way that they behave or act out in that space. But yeah.
Yeah, and from there, the stranger motif blows up over the rest of the film. I mean, Strangers is literally the name of Anna's exhibition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, coming out of the exhibition, Alice and Dan are just saying, who were those awful people? And where do they come from? And why should we care?
Mm-hmm.
It's just basically a summation of, there are other people, we shouldn't care about them until we do, until they're all we care about. And it's hard to think about unless we're standing in front of them.
Right.
And literally, that exhibition is standing in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's the whole thing. Dan, after Anna confirms she's not in love with him, I'm your stranger. Jump.
Yeah, and he thinks that's what she wants because that's what he wants.
Yep.
And I got a note about this later, but both Dan and Larry have very specific ideas about what Anna wants. Later, Larry will say to Dan that Anna doesn't want to be happy. So I feel like that's very telling, that looking at the, I guess, misalignment between, because I feel like we don't really, as an audience, we can only speculate what Anna wants. Like, what do you think she wants here?
She wants something that's less chaotic than what Dan or even Larry at times are bringing around. But at the same time, there's something that beckons her to break rules.
Because there's that moment where in Larry's office, Dan says something like, she doesn't like your simplicity, talking to Larry. But of course, she reveals that she prefers Dan's sensitivity. And so it's like they're trying to pick and choose what they like from this person and that person. Like they're trying to have, the whole classic phrase of, have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
So they want a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but they can't find all these qualities in one person. So they're going to find the others in somebody else. Going back to kind of a broader theme, I think these people they're trying to find what it is they're looking for, what they want. Yeah. They're trying to
climb the highest mountains, run through the field only to be with you. Sorry, I took you literally.
But,
it's Irish. That's not British.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think they just don't know, and that's why they find themselves in such a turbulent relationships.
Exactly. What's better than idleness?
Always in a state of unrest, seems like.
Yeah. Sometimes it's easier to sleep with the windows are open and the unrest is around you.
Mm-hmm.
That's just Joe Pesci and My Cousin Vinny. It's applicable.
It is.
Right. And then as Anna returns to talk to Larry again at the gallery after talking with Dan, Larry goes, "Hello, stranger," to her, knowing there's something up between her and Dan.
Yeah, and the "hello, stranger" line does some neat work in this movie because on the surface, it's this flirty cliche line to initiate conversation, but it's also a line to establish familiarity for reconnecting with someone you haven't seen in a while, for example. And of course, the narrative plays more with teasing out the stranger elements as we go along. But I like that as a recurring motif. Yeah. There you go.
Honestly, I mean, people could argue this doesn't completely fit into the stranger motif. I think it does.
Mm-hmm.
The last shot of the film.
Yeah.
Where it's literally just Alice Natalie Portman walking in modern day Times Square filled with people looking around at her, noticing her, having the same connection as Dan had with her in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it's intermediate strangers. It's not just strangers in New York City catching a glimpse of Alice in the Wild in the beginning. It is strangers in real life New York City on location in Times Square noticing Natalie Portman. It is one of the ballsiest final shots in cinema history, in my opinion, because I don't know how many people in this crowd shot are extras. This is probably shot midday in the middle of actual New York City with actual New Yorkers running around. A real live person could have run up and groped Natalie Portman. You can't think that everybody in that shot was an extra. Some people were paid to look at her. Some people were maybe passers-by who saw her, oh, hey, she was in Star Wars. And so we're basically drawn into the same conundrum of the film. Which is the truth? Which is the film? Where does Alice end, or Jane, or Natalie Portman begin? Who are the real strangers here?
Okay, so this is one of the more pervasive themes of the film because it raises more questions than answers for the audience and for the four main characters. In one way, we are the strangers in the darkened theater watching their intimacies unfold, stuff that we're gaining, the secret matter or material that we shouldn't have access to, these private lives of people. And in another, take Jane/Alice, like her power is her anonymity. Like she has the freedom to be who she wants, wherever she wants. She's an enigma, and that mystery emanating from her catches the attention of those strangers in Times Square. And I think the film is saying that we are drawn to people who interest us and we don't know why.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. Like something makes us curious to know them, to know their secrets, hell, to know and understand why we're so captivated by them. And we could say that, there's a beautiful woman walking down the street and everyone is stopping to gawk at her, but I think there's more to it than that.
Yes, definitely.
And
inner film stuff, and there's just regular stuff.
Right. And because, we're all strangers to someone before we become familiars. And more often than not, after we've been familiars, like how we leave Larry and Anna in this film. They're back together for now, but we get a sense of it being loveless, or at least Anna's mind seems elsewhere while she's lying next to Larry. But how did you read that, by the way?
It's a very weird gray area because on one hand, I think that Larry is happy and I think Anna isn't. But on the other hand, with everything that's happened in this, are we to assume that other people will come into their lives and continue the cycle? Or have they finally found something in themselves that took all of that tumult to sort of settle? It's very hard to say what's going to happen next, but there's more to predict than of either Dan or Alice.
Right. Yeah. And whenever we get to, I think I've got a note in the key scenes part that will kind of address some of that. So I'll save that till we get there.
Cool.
So Jordan, let's talk about Mike Nichols' direction here.
Yeah, let's talk about Mike Nichols. Obviously a legendary director and legendary creative in his own right. This is not Mike Nichols' first movie about adultery, guys. I mean, aside from, The Graduates, which I have nothing but good things to say about. I love that movie so much.
Yes.
It's also one of the forerunners of the New Hollywood movement and also made careers for Dustin Hoffman, Buck Henry. But aside from that, Mike Nichols also directed Carnal Knowledge, a really gross movie about adulterers and misogyny starring Jack Nicholson and Art Garfunkel. They don't sing together, for the record. Can you imagine the singing stylings of Nicholson and Garfunkel?
Nicholson and Garfunkel. One night only.
Going to Scarborough Fair. Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme.
The only time I've heard Jack Nicholson sing, which actually wasn't that bad, was right? In Something's Gotta Give.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he sings La Vie en Rose.
All right.
And half of it in French. And it's quite good.
He also sings in Tommy, he's just not as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's a Ken Russell. It's weird. You know what you're getting into. It's not all Ken Russell. It's also Pete Townsend. So two weird people. But anyway, Mike Nichols is an excellent director for adapting the work of strong writers, especially playwrights. I mean, obviously, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Biloxi Blues, and The Birdcage all apply here. But closer as well. He knows how to make plays work on screen because he knows how not to overdo the cinematography while at least staging the play cinematically. At the same time, Mike Nichols doesn't really have a signature style, does he?
I was thinking about this earlier. Like, I haven't seen a lot of his stuff. I've seen The Birdcage. I've seen The Graduate. Good. I would say no, but at the same time, I mean, if you look at something like The Graduate, oh my God, just the most incredible cinematography and composition.
It's deliberate.
Yes, very deliberate. And this film is no exception. I mean, I think this is very well shot, but it's also shot in a very contemporary sort of way.
Definitely. It doesn't feel like Mike Nichols is restricted by his age here. This is, I believe, his second to last movie ever, because he directs Charlie Wilson's War a few years later with Tom Hanks, Julia Roberts, and Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
And he'd been doing this since the mid-'60s. And it doesn't feel like he's constricted by being a 60s New Hollywood type director still working in the 2000s. He definitely subscribes to modern schools of thought involving, directing film. Like the internet sex scene between Dan and Larry is very cinematic, complete with classical music and fantastic uses of intercutting and facial expressions.
Mm-hmm. I imagine that in uncapable hands, this wouldn't work.
No.
So much of it is just text on a screen and then reaction shots. But the music alone really helps to sell, to punctuate these little comical moments in these in the exchange between Dan and Larry.
And the aquarium sequence is also really well shot. Mm-hmm. And that was where I began to really take note of the way that Mike Nichols uses darkness and shadow in this movie. Like, there's the moment in the bus ride with Dan and Alice where they go under an overpass and we stay with them as the natural light leaves. And the aquarium scene where the light comes from only the tanks, the exhibition where Alice is backlit by the photo of herself. It says so much.
When you were talking about signature style earlier, Mike Nichols' career is pretty varied. Like, he can do a lot of different types of stuff. I mean, just look at the contrast between The Graduate and The Birdcage, for example.
Uh-huh.
And here, he's very conscious of the composition of the shot and how light works. I mean, I'm not sure who shot this movie. I need to look this up, actually. Oh, Stephen Goldblatt shot this.
Okay.
Let's see what he has done. He's done The Help, Angels in America. Oh, Joe versus the Volcano.
Oh my God, really?
Yes.
Fuck.
We'll be doing that
we
over on
didn't mean that, folks.
We'll be doing that over on Patreon next, by the way.
The person who's DP'd on this movie also DP'd the next movie from a famous playwright. How do we do this?
And Batman Forever.
Oh, God.
Batman and Robin.
Oh, God.
But Lethal Weapon.
Oh!
Lethal Weapon 2. Also The Hunger. Ridley Scott.
Wow.
Hunger.
The Hunger's great.
So
yeah, he's done good stuff.
He's done some good stuff. I mean, I think the pairing between him and Nichols works really well here. Like, you got a capable cinematographer, definitely making use of framing and the set design.
You have to take note of this. The little Citizen Kane shot of Larry coming down the mirrored stairs into this strip joint.
Yeah.
Thank God they got a good director for this movie, as you've said.
Just being able to use these things like lighting and the set design, like to use mirrors and be conscious of not only the drama, but the image, I think says a lot.
Exactly. The shot in the strip joint scene of the security camera in the ceiling and Larry looking into it is beautiful. That little fisheye kind of shot there.
Yeah.
So good. As is the zoom on Clive Owen as Alice strips.
Yeah.
Nichols has been directing for 40 years and he can still meld with the times. I love that.
Yeah. I love the way this looks. I mean, it doesn't stand out like in The Graduate, for example.
Right.
But it's, again, this is almost 40 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but yeah, you can't deny that it looks good.
Yes.
We'll just say that.
It looks very nice.
So let's talk about the acting and character work in this movie. Let's start off with Julia Roberts as Anna.
It's very important to note that Cate Blanchett was supposed to play Anna in this movie, but dropped out in order to film Martin Scorsese's The Aviator, it's very important that The Aviator was shooting around the same time that this movie was. And The Aviator would also include Jude Law, who would play, I believe, Errol Flynn in that movie. And Blanchett played Katharine Hepburn and would win an Oscar for playing Katharine Hepburn. Her beating Natalie Portman in this movie is a bit ironic.
Yeah.
And so after Blanchett dropped out of the project, Nichols was down to either Julia Roberts or Nicole Kidman before deciding on Julia Roberts.
Interesting. I know Blanchett would work on another Patrick Marber penned film based on one of his plays called Notes on a Scandal, which is a very, very good film, I think. Kidman would have done well here too, but I'm glad we get Roberts because this might be my favorite performance of hers.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. What about you?
I mean, I think she's fine here. I don't think she's one of the showier performances in this movie.
Mm-mm.
I also just like her in a lot of the sort of Renaissance period ones like Ocean's 11.
Oh, yeah.
Stuff like that. She's really good here. And also, just to clarify, Julia Roberts was hot shit in 2004.
Oh,
From like 2000 until like 2002, she was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. I mean, the Oscar only propels her forth even more. Then Mona Lisa Smile happens, and then Ocean's 12, and, that drowns her a little bit. And Closer was one of the few upticks in this period. But,
yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I like her as an actress. I feel like at the time she was in danger of becoming, I mean, she was really hot as an actress, like as far as her career goes. And I feel like she was doing a lot of the same types of films. I don't think she didn't have a lot of opportunities to showcase like what else she was capable of. Yeah.
Right. Similar to what Jennifer Lawrence was doing last decade.
Right. Let's move on to Clive Owen as Larry.
Oh, man. Again, Clive Owen came up playing Dan in this play. Here he plays Larry. Very funny considering that Kieran Hines played this part first, made the part Irish. Clive Owen takes a part that wasn't even his and makes him A, so easily his own, and B, so bloody well British. Clive Owen in this era was just that good. Damn, shoot him up, killed his momentum.
Yeah, what's the first thing you remember seeing him in?
Okay, this is going to be slightly embarrassing.
No.
The Steve Martin Pink Panther movie. Clive Owen shows up as essentially a James Bond type character because he was the front runner in the tabloids to play James Bond, and MGM had both the character and the Pink Panther. And so Clive Owen showed up as 006, which means you are one away from the big one, to quote Clouseau in that movie. And he shows up for a scene, which isn't really crucial to the rest of the film, and does really well in it. But I think that might have killed his chance of playing James Bond. To this day, my dad is convinced that he would have been a great James Bond, and he honestly would have. But, he was more of an action star and less of a James Bond.
Yeah, let's see. I'm trying to remember. I think the first thing that I remember seeing him in, it was a tiny, tiny part. He was in The Bourne.
Identity, Supremacy?
Identity, yeah. He was like an assassin or something.
Okay.
He was in it for a hot minute. But I also saw him in a movie with Jennifer Aniston and Vincent Cassel called Derailed, which was like a thriller, which I remember being pretty fun. It's pretty good. More recently, I saw him in Croupier.
Oh, yeah.
It was interesting watching this in conjunction with Closer because he plays the same kind of morally hollow, cold character that I wonder if that's where he built the foundation of what he would bring to the part of Larry. Right. But yeah, that's one you should go check out. I think it leaves Criterion at the end of the month, but I think it's on one of the other streaming services. But yeah, go check that out.
I think I saw it on another streaming service. I think somewhere. I think maybe Hulu. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
Clive Owen in this movie is really good at just putting the right amount of emphasis on certain lines and making them sing. And this is his first time playing Larry, and I still can't believe that because he makes this his own and makes me feel like he's been doing this for years.
What you said about him making this part his own, and we'll talk about this later, but he just has so much range that he brings in, and he can showcase it in a very short window of time, especially in that scene with him and Anna towards the end.
Yes.
But we'll talk about that more in a bit. But let's talk about Jude Law as Dan.
Jude Law was in 6 major releases in 2004. All of them came out between September and December that year in a 4-month radius. And those 4 major releases are Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow, I Heart Huckabees, Alfie, This, The Aviator, and a narrator role in Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. Chris Rock had a whole bit in his Oscar monologue that year about this, where he goes, "Who is Jude Law? How come he's in every movie I have seen the last 4 years? He's in everything. Even the movies he's not in. If you read the credits, it says he made cupcakes or something." People got apparently really mad that he attacked Jude Law in this. Were they familiar with Chris Rock's stand-up at all?
It's very impressive. I mean, he was working a lot, and I can't remember the first thing I saw him in was Gattaca.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible just like how present he was like on the scene. Like just he was in everything, has had such a stellar career and has really made a name for himself. And I'm really glad that he's gotten so much really great work because he has tackled just a diverse range of projects. And I think that so many actors don't really get those opportunities. Whereas like they could be very capable of doing more diverse roles, for example. Yeah. I can't think of anything I've seen him in that he didn't give a good performance in.
No, yeah, he's really good most of the time. I mean, yeah, no, he's good in here. He's very compelling and kind of slimy and sort of keeps the film moving. I'm honestly shocked he didn't get some sort of Oscar consideration that year. Maybe with the overstimulation of everything else he was in that sort of knocked him off. But
yeah, that's possible because
he's great here.
He plays Dan in a lot of different ways. Because we see so many different facets of the character. We see him being charming. We see him being sympathetic. There are moments where he just breaks down, and there's moments where he's shouting. And I think he sells it. I mean, I think he understands like who his character is, or perhaps like what is keeping him from getting what he wants because he doesn't know what it is. But
yeah.
And lastly, we have Natalie Portman as Alice.
Natalie Portman has said contemporarily that this was the film that broke her away from the Star Wars association because she was doing the prequels at this point, and that was basically who she was. And this film sort of helped that. And also during the press Oscar campaign for this, early 2005, she would have her hair cropped, preparing for the other role that established her as a legitimate star, the role in V for Vendetta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and even before this, like she had an incredible start as a young actor. I mean, my God, Leon the Professional, she's outstanding in that. She's got a small part in Heat, but she's really good there. She shows up in Mars Attacks.
Yeah, she's great in Beautiful Girls, the Matt Dillon film. She made a really nice name for herself as sort of a child star, and by this point, she was able to do more adult work and completely shy away from that sort of, the first sort of 10 years of her career, which was huge. I mean, not many actors can make that leap. And for her to do that so easily and so admirably in this movie, I think is very impressive and has paved the way for such an excellent career ever since.
It would have been so easy for her to remain associated with Star Wars because anytime you're part of a big IP, that to break away from that seems incredibly challenging, especially when you've got sequels coming out over a span of a few years. And in the meantime, you still want to be doing other stuff. And so I'm glad that she had those opportunities to separate herself from that after a time. All right, let's talk about some of this music. Tell us about some of the pop music here.
Of course, as predicted, there is a lot of Damien Rice in this movie. The film begins with The Blower's Daughter, and it plays over the ending. It bookends the film. And it also features Rice's Cold Water. Damien Rice is like if David Gray was slightly less annoying and slightly less famous.
Before we move on, I got a little story here about The Blower's Daughter. So the last time I heard this song in the wild was at Starbucks in New York City. And I can't remember where. It was, I think, near Lincoln Center or something. But I was there with my boyfriend at the time around New Year's, and I was deeply in love and also in a toxic relationship, but didn't realize it at the time. And but I thought of this movie, and I just let the music kind of wash over me and just had a moment. And looking back, I'm just thinking about how much I've learned about maturity through experience when it comes to relationships. And I want to come back to this idea at the end, but yes, more good music in this movie. What else we got?
Obviously a lot of other cool stuff. As Larry walks into the strip club, World Outside by the Devlins plays, but that's the least interesting song that plays in the strip club, because when we get to the Paradise Suite, I'm going to try and not sound ridiculous saying this in a proper voice, but Smack My Bitch Up by The Prodigy plays. One of the British panel shows that I watch, Mock the Week, there's a bit where they have to, where one of the performers needs to dub over like a newsreel clip of like, the Queen or, whoever doing something. And there's one bit that where it's like a Queen's ball or something. And it just cuts to an orchestra playing. And you just hear him go, music provided by the Grenadier Guards giving their performance of Smack My Bitch Up. So I've always thought about that. But yeah, Smack My Bitch Up by The Prodigy. One of the most surprising things you will learn about local boring movie guy Jordan is that I actually really like The Prodigy. I'm a sucker for that whole 90s proto-EDM genre. You know, The Prodigy, Massive Attack, Fatboy Slim, Daft Punk. The Prodigy's Fat of the Land album has some fucking bangers on them. You know, obviously the big hit was Firestarter, then there's Smack My Bitch Up, and also Breathe. But yeah, no, it's a cool EDM. And to balance out this rare bit of coolness from me, my first post-pandemic concert is going to be Genesis at the Garden, so that should level things up again.
Oh man, I'm jealous. That's going to be so fun.
Oh my god, it's going to be insane. It's funny because they've literally scheduled days in between the venues so that they don't like overheat themselves. They have like 2 days in between gigs. Good for them.
Oh hell yeah.
And then this strip club scene lasts so long that the Prodigy song fades out. And as we discussed earlier, How Soon Is Now by the Smiths starts playing.
Yeah, so you said earlier you don't much care for the Smiths.
The funny thing is I actually do really like that sort of genre of 80s alt-rock. You know, I'm fine with like, you know, Tears for Fears, Depeche Mode, XTC. But I don't like the Smiths because A, I don't like Morrissey's voice. B, I don't like how Morrissey makes all of his songs about very sad things trying to be happy. And C, and most importantly, I don't like Morrissey. I just don't.
I don't have an opinion or else I would comment,
okay.
But...
No, I just, you know, Morrissey is an ass. A lot of my friends actually like the Smiths a little bit more than me. And you know what? More power to you. The Smiths are a perfectly fine 80s alt-rock band. There are some good songs. They all just sound the same to me because I cannot stand Morrissey. Anyway.
Fair enough.
You're not going to get a lot of like vulgarities out of me, but you're going to get me slagging off Morrissey. So I hope you got what you came for.
Speaking of slag.
This is the only episode where you can use the transition, speaking of slag.
Oh my God. All right. Let's talk about some memorable and key scenes from Closer.
Isn't Speaking of Slag Marber's podcast? This is Marber, the slag.
Speaking of slag, let's dive into the Marberverse.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay. So, as to some memorable key scenes in this. The entire scene where Dan meets and comes on to Anna, and then Anna photographs Alice, who's figured out that Dan is cheating. From a playwriting standpoint, this is a fantastic long scene. It uses all three dynamics really well. The Anna and Alice bit is great, especially knowing that Alice knows, and that she's sort of waiting to let it out, and also that Anna is trying to be nice while knowing that Dan's dooming their relationship. Mm-hmm. A lot of very good emotions there.
Yeah, I like how that plays out because it, more specifically, how Alice is playing it because she plays so naive and she's just this little American girl and doesn't know anything. But then when she lets it be known that she knows that, hey, yeah, I heard you guys talking and just take my fucking picture.
Yeah, the little shot of her coming around with the tears down her face is great.
Yeah. Yeah, and just how in that shot of Anna with her camera and just that almost hesitance to take her picture or just the guilt and shame. I mean, her whole character is just saturated with guilt and shame this whole movie, I feel like.
Exactly.
But yeah, we really start to see it first here. We've talked a little bit about Anna and Larry's first meeting in the aquarium.
Yeah, that is a great scene.
Fantastic. That's where we get the I've got the coat. The white coat, you know. So I see.
Was the wanker. Not
like
wanker, wanker.
It's like the little flasher gremlin. I feel like as we go on, we just get tired and kind of
we get goofy as we go.
Get goofy.
That always happens, but it's okay.
Is.
We're nearly done. Don't worry.
Yeah.
We just have a couple more scenes to go over, then some call things, and then we're out of here.
Anna. I got the coat. The white coat.
So I see.
I'm Larry, the doctor.
Hello, Dr. Larry.
Feel free to call me the Sultan. I can't believe these things actually happen. I thought if you showed up, you'd be an old trout, but you are bloody gorgeous.
Well, thank you.
Fish. You've got to respect them.
Have you?
Of course. We were fish long ago, before we were apes. You mentioned a hotel. No rush. Actually, there is. I've got to be in surgery by 3.
Are you having an operation?
No, I'm doing one.
Are you really a doctor?
I said I was. You are, Anna.
I'm sorry, did I photograph you? Did we meet somewhere?
Come on, don't play games, you nymph of the net.
Excuse me?
You were up for it yesterday.
Was I?
Yeah. Wear my wet knickers. Sit on my face. Come hungry bitch typing.
Okay.
Why do I feel like a pervert?
I think you're the victim of a practical joke.
I am so sorry. No. We spoke on the net last night, and now you've seen me.
I wasn't on the net last night.
Where were you between the hours of 6:45 and 7 p.m.?
That's really none of your business. Where were you?
On the net talking to you. Well, I was talking to someone.
Someone pretending to be me. I think you were talking to Daniel Wolf.
Who?
This guy I know. It's him.
No, I was talking to a woman.
How do you know?
Believe me, she was a woman. I got a huge... She was a She wasn't, was she? What a bastard.
The scene after Anna returns to the exhibition after talking with Dan, it's back to Larry, is chock full of excellent dialogue back and forth between Anna and Larry. It's also pretty much the midpoint of the film and the last sort of scene before we get, quote-unquote, Act 2 of the play, which starts with, them married and the other two breaking it off.
Right, because this finally establishes our pairings and kind of the linkages between relationships and the trading off, I guess, as it were, that's going to be happening.
I've talked at length about this, but the Larry and Alice scene in the strip club, like a sparring match from cool, intense to slick, both players having the upper hand at different points, especially a tour de force for Natalie Portman and probably the scene that got her the Oscar nomination.
Yeah, she's playing it seductively and coy and evasive, but as the scene goes on, whenever she finally says that my name is just plain Jane Jones, like we see the chinks in her armor break. I think it's almost like she's tired. There's just this resignation that comes over her, where she's been playing this role. She's had on this persona the whole time, and he has just been relentless the whole time, and finally wears her down.
I think it's best I don't attempt to touch you. I'd like to touch you. Later.
I'm not a whore.
I wouldn't pay. Why the fuck did he leave you?
What's your job?
A question. You've asked me a question.
So?
It's a chink in your armor.
I'm not wearing armor.
Yes, you are. You know what I do. Why are you calling yourself Jane?
Because it's my name.
We both know it isn't. So you're all protecting your identities. There's a girl out there calls herself Venus. What's her real name?
Pluto.
You're cheeky.
Would you like me to stop being cheeky?
No.
What's your name?
Daniel.
Daniel, the dermatologist.
I never told you my job.
I guessed.
You're strong. There's another one out there, judging by the scars, a recent patient of Dr. Tit calls herself Cupid. Who's going to tell her that Cupid was a bloke?
He wasn't a bloke, he was a little boy.
I want you to tell me your name. Please.
Thank you. My name is Jane.
Your real name.
Thank you. My real name is Jane.
Careful.
Thank you. Still Jane.
I've got about another 500 quid here. Why don't I just give you all this money and you tell me what your real name is? Alice.
I promise. Thank you. My real name is plain Jane Jones.
I may be rich, but I'm not stupid.
What a shame, Doc. I love him rich and stupid.
Don't you fuck around with me!
I apologize.
Accepted. All the girls in this hellhole, the pneumatic robots, the coked-up baby dolls, and you're no different. When you all use stage names to con yourselves that you're someone else, so you don't feel ashamed when you show your cunts and arseholes to complete fucking strangers. I am trying to have a conversation here.
You're out of cash, boss.
I paid this room.
This is extra.
We met last year.
Wrong girl.
Talk to me!
I am.
Talk to me in real life. I didn't know you'd be here. I know who you are. I love you. I love everything about you that hurts.
And then I love the scene in Larry's office, him and Dan. Very quick, but so many quick exchanges, plus Larry with the upper hand towards the end. Joyously brilliant stuff from Clive Owen here. Also, Owen looks like David Schwimmer in some shots here. He just kind of does. And you think this scene's going to end wholesomely, but Larry drops the bomb and retains the upper hand. It's beautiful.
It is. I really love this scene a lot. One thing that I noticed in doing my notes is that both Larry and Dan, they think they know what it means to love, but both have very superficial philosophical views of it. Like Dan says he can make Anna happy. Larry says she doesn't want to be happy. Right. Dan says Larry loves Anna like a dog loves its owner, as he says, and the owner loves the dog for so doing.
Yeah.
And Larry tells Dan that he doesn't understand love because he doesn't understand compromise. So it's a very curious, competitive moment they have here where these, not only are they trying to argue like why one loves her more than the other, but how one's personal views on love and that sort of thing, how those differ. But the turn of this scene is so good.
Oh, it is.
Whenever you think that they've kind of buddied up and made up in some way, and he sends Dan away, go back to Alice.
Yeah.
That's what you need to do. And this is where I found her. She's working in this club. And we think as the audience that he is being sincere and honest, but
yes.
If we have not learned our lesson by now that nobody is honest in this movie,
no,
he stops him just to give him like one more bit of advice. You think he's just like, I lied to you. I did fuck Alice. He has one more line, but then he ends with Buster, you know, the pet name that Alice has for Dan. And it's just a blow like you wouldn't believe.
So good.
It's great. Like just
so effective. Builds
Dan up just to rip him to shreds in one blow. It's so good.
I don't know what to do. You want my advice? You go back to Alice.
She'd never have me. She's vanished.
No, she hasn't. I found her by accident. She's working in a club. Yes, I saw her naked. No, I did not fuck her.
Oh, you spoke to her?
Yes, I know. 1 minute.
How is she?
She loves you. Beyond comprehension. Your prescription. It's where she works. Go to her.
Thank you.
You're still pissing about on the net?
Not recently.
I wanted to kill you.
What, you wanted to fuck me?
Don't get lippy. I like your book, by the way.
Thanks. You stand alone.
With Anna. You're still writing obituaries. Busy?
I was made editor.
Yeah? How come?
Previous editor died. Alcohol poisoning. I sat with him for a week in the hospital.
I really do have patience to see.
Thank you.
For what?
Being kind.
I am kind. Your invoice is in the post. Dan. I lied to you. I did fuck Alice. Sorry for telling you. I'm just not big enough to forgive you. Buster.
We talked about this, of course. Larry coming home from his trip, having his confrontation with Anna, the first time coming home to his wife. And he paints himself as her champion, her biggest fan and supporter, even buying a postcard, or was it a book? Do you remember?
I think it was a postcard.
Yeah. I mean, he mentions the book, I think, with one of her portraits that she took to boost her sales. But this is also a window into how he sees himself when she says, "You're wonderful." He says, "Don't ever forget it." Like he's this great prize, but it's also not necessarily threatening. You could kind of read it that way. But we also get a glimpse into how he sees Anna, echoing what he said to Dan about her in his office earlier. He says, pretty much going off of what Dan has told him, he says to her, "You think you don't deserve happiness, but you do, Anna."
Yeah.
that goes to like how he and Dan have very specific ideas about what she wants. And Owen is just so fucking good here. He's threatening, he's boastful, he's defensive, and he's vulnerable. That in that moment when he's like, "Did you ever love me?" And they embrace after all of that, after all the harsh things that they've said, they embrace, and you can just see him, walk away just totally defeated. I don't know. We're just really put through the ringer as an audience. There's just so many emotional ups and downs that we're on here.
It's a very tough scene, but it's also very rewarding for the quality of the acting, for the quality of the writing. It puts you through the ringer, but it's also just really good, and it's a really eye-opening scene.
Yeah. And I think just before all this, like there's that moment where, as you were talking about earlier, just that barrage of questions about, what the sex was like. Oh, did you like him coming in your face and all that sort of thing?
What did it taste like? Like you, but sweeter.
Yeah, that's the spirit. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. Now fuck off and die, you fucked up slag. Now, what I like about that, to my ear, it's the cadence, like, because we get this back and forth, it's staccato. And then it just kind of, the train comes to a halt there. The way Clive Owen plays it, it's like he relaxes. It's like he gets what he wants. It's like, that's the spirit. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. It's almost climactic for him, if we want to extend the metaphor. And it's like he gets what he's been trying to tear out of her this whole time during this exchange, and he gets it. Then after he's gotten it, he's like, fuck off and die. Yeah. And it's just so fucking cruel.
Yeah. That's how these people are.
Yeah. The ebb and flow and how it resolves is just, I don't know, very satisfying to watch. So one more thing. So the scene between Dan and Alice at the end, like they're about to go away together. They're so in love, and in an instant, it all crumbles. It's like the problem with people like Dan and Larry is that love, it's not enough to have it. It can't be trusted. So I must test it to death. Like Larry earlier, Dan can't let it go. He's wanting to know everything about Alice's encounter with Larry because Larry told him about it, but he hasn't confronted her about it, and it's just eating him up. At one point, Alice makes the comment like, "Where is this love? Like, I can't feel it. I can't touch it or whatever." And I mean, love is a subjective concept. It's not concrete, but here I think it's such an empty term, and that's what she's pointing out. Like that's what it is for Dan. Like he has this idea of it, but it has no tangibility. And also here we see more of this fear of being abandoned in a relationship. Like earlier, Larry is sure that Anna's about to leave him when he tells her about the prostitute in New York. And here Alice says that she's waiting for Dan to leave her. And I think it's important to consider, and tell me what you think of this, like fear of being left, like in a relationship, is not necessarily the same as fear of being alone. So for these characters, it's fear of no longer being in control of a relationship and also in control of the other person in the relationship. Like that possessiveness is threatened.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
It ties into what you were saying also about No Ton of Scandal, about sort of the fear of being alone and the fear of having not a lot of other people to sort of rely on in that respect. Yeah, there is also the sort of component of control, as you said, but also knowing everything, seeing everything, having the upper hand in everything, having the power, having the
right,
all of the sex you want without feeling bad about it, without being snuck under again. But it's also a fleeting feeling, and they don't realize it until it's gone, and they want to have to claim that feeling again.
Right. And I think, too, it denies them access to the inner lives of other people, because that's essentially what they've been feeding on, is this access to the intimate inner workings of the people that they've knowingly or not been preying on. I was just thinking about the fear of being left. It's not necessarily the same as fear of being alone. I think that to be left in a relationship, it seems to imply that there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like the ultimate insult in a way, or not just insult, but to be denied, I guess, or to be deemed unworthy for this partnership, or
it's whatever you've done, it isn't good enough.
It's not good enough, right?
Right. It's something you can't help at the present moment, and that you have to sort of be okay with and move on from. And sometimes it's harder to do than others.
It's like somehow being deficient.
Well,
yeah. But lastly, I'll just say that none of these relationships are established on trust. So in a way, they're doomed from the get-go. So Dan and Alice, he kisses her without consent while she's unconscious in the cab. The cabbie asks, is she yours? Yes, she's mine. And also using Alice's life for what she's made up about her backstory for his book. Dan and Anna, they kiss knowing Dan is with Alice and soon become involved. Larry and Anna, they meet because of Dan's deception online. Larry and Alice, they get involved knowingly cheating on their partners. Yeah. And when all of these relationships fail, they find each other again knowing they can't trust the other person, right?
Yeah.
They increasingly bring out the worst in each other and don't learn from their misguided impulses and behaviors. Right. So do you think these characters change at all?
Alice doesn't change. She's wanting the exact same thing that she wanted in London, looking for people that way. Maybe she's changed a little because of how she's sort of been screwed over by Dan and by Larry.
Right.
Dan definitely doesn't change. He's been duped, and he will continue to sort of weasel around everybody. Anna doesn't change. She probably wants to by the end of this, but she's still kind of the same. Larry probably doesn't change, even though he's the closest to change.
So, how so?
Larry kind of gets what he wants by the end. He gets the girl. He gets the upper hand in a way that sort of prevents him against both Dan and Alice.
Yeah.
And he seems to be kind of happy with Anna, even though she may not be happy with him.
No, that's a good point. And in a way, it doesn't matter whether she's happy or not, because in his mind, she doesn't want to be happy. So he doesn't have to make her happy.
Right.
He just wants the trappings of a healthy relationship, a successful wife, perhaps. That's a good point. But yeah, Dan, I think, is the one who, he doesn't necessarily change, but I think that the darker side of him finally emerges there at the end when he slaps Alice.
Yes.
And she's just like, go on, you want to hit me, don't you? Hit me, fucker.
Yeah.
And he does it. And that's when we get that transition and she's hightailing it out of there.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody changes or learns their lesson. I feel most sorry for Anna because in a way she's just trapped in this relationship for now. I mean, it's been so on and off. I mean, it does leave you wondering what's going to happen with her, but that is Closer. Let's give out that extra of the movie award.
So, as I was watching this, the front runner for the first bit of it was the goth guy in the clothes too small for him talking Dan's ear off about something as Alice comes back from talking to Larry. You came up with a really good one, though, that might usurp him.
Yeah, I was going to save this as an honorable mention, but I would add
I think this is it.
Oh, you think this is it?
Yeah, I do.
It's the cabbie who he pulls up to pick Dan up on the curb, and he's waved away. And you can hear him, you don't see him, you just hear him say, make up your bleeding mind.
Even the cabbie is mad about shit.
Oh, Lord. But yeah, that cracks me up. But the first one that I thought of. But I like your pick, too.
Well, yours is probably the better of the two.
All right. So final thoughts on Closer. What do you got, Jordan?
Okay. Despite this not really being a Jordan movie in terms of it being a very sexualized, hard to watch, fucked up, in your face kind of drama, I still really like this movie on the strength of so much. The direction, the performances, the writing, how this feels, how some scenes really just sort of sing and fly off of it. Just the interpersonal stuff. I was really impressed by this movie, and while it's not exactly something I would rewatch every year as you have, because I need some time to sort of, shower off, I still was really impressed with this movie, and especially as a playwriting adaptation.
Yeah.
I really like this one.
Good. I'll forefront my final thoughts by saying that I'm very, very proud of our conversation today, because I think that we've really given this a fair critical analysis and have unpacked a lot of really cool and interesting things. Like I love, as I said, the dialogue in this movie, but I think now what I like this movie even better for these reasons. And it does well to paint dishonest people honestly, meaning that it shows how reckless people can often be in relationships, and that people have a lot of trouble discovering what they want and working through protecting their vulnerabilities and figuring out what of themselves they're willing to give another person and when it's safe to do so. And I said dishonest earlier because I think we're often dishonest with ourselves about who we are and what we want, and that bleeds over and contaminates relationships with others for various reasons. One of my best friends once told me that regarding a relationship, that when it's right, it's easy. And I think that's partly true. It's easier to grow and trust one another when there's synergy, like love comes more easily, but time has shown me that it takes work and patience too, and that can be challenging. But I think Closer, it presents an idea of love that's false, like a trap that a lot of people fall into and don't learn from once they're out of it. And they end up chasing this emotional sabotage that they bring over from past relationships. And some people can become addicted to that, or they think that is what love is or what a relationship is supposed to look like because they've normalized that toxicity that they're used to.
Yeah.
I think that has, that's hindered a lot of people. They fall into that trap. So I think this is an important film that challenges us to reflect on those choices we made, to hopefully inform the choices we make in the future, but also to remind us to keep our expectations in check. Because like Dan or Larry, this whole idea of like a fantasy or an idealized version of love or a significant other that we're expecting to find and mold to our liking, and also to have a willingness to be changed for the better, like to learn from other people, to turn strangers into our familiars, in a positive way. As I kind of previewed earlier, I think Closer has a lot to say about maturity through experience, but also in the characters in the film, how they don't, or at least at this point in time, don't necessarily have the opportunity to learn from that. But I think what it offers us as an audience is universal and timeless, and I think very relevant. And over the years, it's spoken to me more and more. And I think preparing for this episode and talking about it with you, like, I just appreciate it so much more. And I think there's just a lot here to appreciate, and hope you listeners do too.
It's a kind of watch you have to really prepare yourself to get into the sort of kind of disgusting at times, but also just sort of cold, disturbing kind of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
It's still a worthy watch.
Yeah.
And now, coming soon to video cassette.
What plaything can you offer me today?
The planet Earth.
What's happening?
It's an attack.
Pathetic Earthlings! Who can save you now?
Flash! They'll kill you!
Let's all team up and fight him.
Prepare him for torture!
I want him.
Stop at nothing.
I love you! But we only have 14 hours to save the Earth!
Flash Gordon is still alive.
Gordon's alive? Die! Yes!
Must be my lucky day.
All right, it's time to give a special shout out to our casual and preferred renters over on Patreon. Lewis, Mike, and Jack from Random Movie Roulette, Mondo, Pete, Ryan M, Ryan S, Jacob and Taff from Test Pattern, Naomi and Rich from Bloody in Love, James, Zach, and Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Oh my gosh. Yeah, by the way, Mark just graduated from college over here. As we record this, it was just this past week. So, oh my gosh, I'm so happy for him. I'm very proud of my podcast partner. So, a warm congratulations, and hey, keep on keeping on.
Yeah, congrats, Mark. Thank you all so much for supporting the show. We really, really appreciate it. Patronage goes towards helping us offset the cost of hosting and producing this show. If you're not a patron but are interested in becoming one, head over to patreon.com/VericonVideo for more information. We got some great perks for you. You can get starting at $2 a month, such as bonus episodes not available on our main feed, commentaries, and a super cool gift pack loaded with Vericon video merch and a few other little surprises.
Yeah, if you're one of our patrons, you're going to get our much easier playwright next episode from a much more fun playwright that isn't an in-your-face one. So that's another incentive to become a patron.
Yes.
Remember to rate and review the show on iTunes. I'll do it in Australian if you want me to. Remember to rate and review the show on iTunes. If you have any questions, suggestions, or just want to tell us what you think of the show, drop us a line at vericonvideo@gmail.com.
Just the Wiggles all of a sudden. Potato.
Right. Now, what do you think of the movie? I'm back to LA Confidential again.
Yes. Or you can DM us on Twitter at Vericon Video, or give us a call and leave a message on the Vericon Video hotline at 312-620-5560. That's all for today, folks, but we will be back very soon to talk about more forgotten and unforgettable movies pulled from the shelves right here at Vericon Video. So long, everybody.
Goodbye, and now fuck up and die, you fucked up slags.
That sounds like something Lewis would normally say at the end of a podcast.
Goodbye, Vietnam! That's right. I'm history. I'm out of here. I got the lucky ticket home, baby.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Jenny.
Bye-bye, boys.
Have fun storming the castle. Goodbye.
Do take good care of yourself.
What is this, your farewell speech? Going home. Have a good trip.
Hasta la vista, baby.
I have to go.
Adieu. Auf Wiedersehen. Gesundheit.
Farewell.